Hello, welcome back to our evening tea. I'm Anila, and this is Aaron. You all know him.
And you all know her.
Today's topic is dealing with things that are out of your control. Dealing with your emotions when things are out of your control. So let's begin.
And before we get into it, if you have anything to contribute to this topic or want to hear anything from us about what you think, make sure to leave a comment below and we will definitely see it and we'll incorporate it into future episodes. So with that, dealing with things that are out of our control, dealing with our emotions when things are out of our control, surrounding things that are out of our control. So last episode we were talking about
dealing with different emotions based on different traumatic events that happen or happy events that happen, or like how to deal with it yourself and how to help others deal with it or like empathize with them and things like that. But today we're talking about especially about not feeling guilty about your family situations or not feeling ashamed or things like that, where to fit in kids' life, and it's not really their fault. Sometimes they do. A lot of kids, I did when I was a kid, I think. I probably still do.
to fit in, like, what do you mean?
To like
with your peers?
Yeah, when you feel like you will be judged for something, you conveniently avoid saying those things. Or like, for example, if you're hanging out with, I mean, kids don't really know, but most people usually judge. And when you're hanging out with a bunch of people, and then if they make a joke about someone's either financial situation or family situation,
like when kids are picking on each other.
Then you don't really want to say that when that's happening to other kids, or
you don't want to admit it.
Yeah, you don't want to admit it that you are in the same situation or whatever. Like to fit in. People, and it's like it eventually leads to you feeling ashamed of that thing or feeling like you should hide that, and you keep doing that if you don't really deal with the situation and understand that it's not your fault, but you still have to realize it's not really something that needs to change. It's just what it is. People who are picking on it needs to change.
Yeah. I feel like that is a very specific angle at it, and it definitely happens like that.
And it's not in your control, like, especially if you're a kid and your parents are divorced, or if you're a kid and your parents are not so rich, or if you're a kid and some random things like what your parents do is not in your control, but you get picked on things. And that, if not dealt proper, can lead to really a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's definitely one example. I feel like the topic in general, though, can be a lot more broad, like a lot, because there's other ways that same thing happens where like you're something's happening that's out of your control and you place the guilt on yourself or the blame, or just even don't sit with it at all, don't think about it at all, and just let it all happen around you, and then subconsciously things are happening during that time, which you do internalize.
Yeah, even in like adult life, some things are like totally out of your control, or in your control, but it's like something that happened. The things that I can think of are like in today's presently what's happening related to me is like layoffs, even though it's not something you brought on anyone, or it's not something that affected me immediately. It's still like there is this guilt like of who is chosen, and like it's really hard to share that news if you don't sit with it and think through and realize it's not your fault.
Yeah, I mean I wonder why people place blame on anyone, including themselves, in situations where it's not like a directly their fault.
Yeah, I feel like it has to do with like seeing different situations. I feel like you see someone else struggling with it. It's like guilt and how do you explain the feeling of like you let down? Shame, yeah, shame. Like you feel that. Everyone feels it, and it also, if you do not deal with it, it gets escalated and you just blame yourself for a lot of things, or blame everyone around you for a lot of things, instead of actually realizing it's not anyone's fault. It just happened and you have to deal with it.
So you think the blame happens because we're not processing those situations properly? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I feel like when you feel shame, you don't really want to talk to anyone, and if it's just your opinion and you don't like, it's really hard to realize a positive thing or negative things like based on how you're feeling, if you don't share or talk to people, talk to someone about it, or like try to write a journal or realize things. Like there are so many things you can do to process the emotions, but if you're not, it's just, it happens and then the cycle continues.
Yeah. And that speaking of breaking the cycle, I think that could happen at any time. Like there's always things to think through, and it's if you're not processing those emotions, then you're not processing them with anything. Like it's like you're either processing your emotions or you're not. Like we're not picking and choosing. Okay, I'm gonna think through this situation, but I'll just let that one go. I mean, maybe some people, but me, I found that either I'm thinking through everything that's going on, or I'm like purposely like not thinking of anything and just coasting.
Yeah. One thing I can think of that I still struggle with, I'm like getting better at it, is like the language and I'm like, my native language is Telugu, which is like southern one of the states in India, and even though we all learn Hindi in school, it's not really, we don't really learn to be like fluent in it. And then when I moved for college and had to learn a different language overnight for pretty much overnight to be able to communicate with a lot of majority of people in college. And it's like the way some words in Telugu sound like curse words in Hindi, and people like kind of make fun of it. Although it was supposed to be taken light joke, I still like struggle with when people say, "How do you say this in your language?" And I'm like, "Can I say it? I don't really want to be made fun of." So I would avoid sometimes not saying it. I would be like, "Oh, whatever, I don't know," even though I know, or I don't really want to think, or I feel like it will be made fun of, even though I know we are adults, but it's like something I did not process. I did not understand. They're not making fun of me. They're just making
jesting at the situation. How like this sounds like this. And
and it's really not anyone's fault. It's just like I did not process it.
So like the longer you don't process it, the more it infiltrates other situations in your life.
And like it takes a lot of work to get away from it again.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of things, good examples that are examples of bad processing leading to, or lack of processing leading to negative, unnecessary negative circumstances later in life. Like we were talking about the other day, divorce, and how kids of parents who get divorced, like for me, I didn't personally take anything from the situation. Like I didn't put any blame on myself until later. I thought later it started, when I started processing, I went through that. But at the time, I specifically remember trying to put it out of my mind completely. Like trying to ignore that it was happening.
Yeah, I want you to talk about how the whole situation was handled at school that you were trying to tell me the other day.
Oh yeah, so they actually called us up. They called me, my brother and sister, and a couple other kids who had their parents had recently gotten divorced. I guess it was like a therapy session, which we didn't sign up for. I didn't even know it was happening. I just got called up, and they sat us down in like a dimly lit room with a therapist, a group therapy session. I was 10 years old, my brother was 9, and my sister was 7.
And those situations like that, I feel like also cause not being able to process emotions, because they had good intentions in their mind, but they don't understand other kids are going to ask you why they called you, and like you have to explain all that. It like basically creates a feeling of shame. And
this was I guess so. For me, I don't remember, because I'm pretty sure I was asked those questions when I got back to class, but I don't remember what my answer was or anything. But this was towards the beginning of when, because now divorce is like a very normal thing in American society, unfortunately, but it is. This was before that. Like this was towards the beginning of that. So I think now it's like half of marriages end in divorce or something like that. at the time, it wasn't anything like that. So there was like a couple kids from the entire school that were there in this therapy group and us. So yeah, as far as me, I sat down and I said, they said, is there anything you think, like, it's not your fault? I remember them saying that, and I was like, I know it's not my fault, and I refused to talk. They're like, okay, you can go. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go. I don't want to be here. I didn't ask to be here. I didn't want to think about it in the first place, and now you're like putting me in a forcible therapy session. I definitely don't want to do it in that situation. But yeah, like sitting with that at that time, like that would have been good for me to talk about it there, especially with my little brother and sister who were going through the same thing. But I hadn't come to terms with it myself enough to wrap my mind around it and talk about it. And I didn't have the skills that I do now to like understand what's going on and talk through it. I didn't have the coping mechanisms to quickly do that there. So for me, it was just like, it's something that stands out in my mind very vividly out of the very few things they do from my early childhood, that therapy session. But if I would have had the skills that I have now to properly cope with things and really sit with the emotions and feel comfortable with my emotional self, and then talk about it, it would have been better for me in the long run.
Yeah.
Like to get that out there, especially with my brother and sister, but even just myself, to talk about it and process what was happening. I probably would have avoided a lot of negative emotions, including guilt and shame, which came later in life. At that point, I wasn't blaming anything on myself. I just was laser focused on the next footstep in life, because I was already like anxious and stuff as a kid, but I had a lot going on that I didn't want to sit there and figure out how to process this giant situation. Yeah. But I think if we were taught how to process emotions better at a younger age, if that's like a thing that they're teaching the youth, it would have been a lot easier on me, and I know it would be many situations would be a lot easier on a lot of younger kids if that's something we were taught.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, growing up, I never had any talk related to emotions.
Yeah,
it's just
I don't
like
remember
suck it up.
Like that either for me. Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Like it was never like, especially I guess I don't know how it is here, if parents really talk about like relationships. It's like a taboo in India.
Yeah, it's
like
pretty taboo here too.
Yeah,
to
it's
a
like
certain
you
age.
shouldn't be like, you first of all shouldn't be in a relationship with anyone at any age until you're getting married.
Oh yeah, yes.
And like that leads to a lot of not processing emotions, and I personally I feel like it works for some people, the arranged marriage thing, but they have to be willing to learn or be a doormat.
You mean the individual being married?
Yeah. Or like, they have like
both they
of
have
them.
to learn how to be in a relationship on their own.
Yeah, and like,
because you don't talk about it as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah. It's like yeah, you shouldn't talk to the I don't think it's the same still. I don't really know. I was a rebel. I always would do things people said not to do just because they said not to do. But it's like a really big deal for I know a girl in my college, or I know a lot of people in different phases of education I've met where their parents would be like really, really upset if they know that they talk to the opposite gender anywhere in school or anywhere, like if they are like close to the opposite gender or whatever. In schools too in India, I don't know about like everywhere in India, but especially in the southern India, especially from the state where I am from, girls and boys are separated out. Like they sit totally separate, and like it's like really frowned upon to talk to the opposite gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's really hard for a kid to deal with it. And like, how are you going to grow up and be an adult in the society if you, for most of the, even like grown-ups, like an adult in the society doesn't, like, based on the marriage they're in, sometimes doesn't really talk to the opposite gender.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
that can't be healthy.
Yeah, it's definitely not healthy. Like, what are you going to teach you? Yeah, teach your kids is what I was gonna say, but that's what they teach their kids, is to not talk to the opposite gender.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to learn how to deal with it, or learn that everyone goes through the same things, or learn that respecting the opposite gender or things like that.
Yeah, especially when like now I know Western culture and society has infiltrated into India pretty heavily, and those Western ideals about like gender, about like what a man should be and should think of a woman, and what a woman should be and should think of a man, that has to be hard in that scenario where like women don't, or girls don't talk to boys, boys don't talk to girls. Then you grow up, you get married by your families, you have never been close to the other gender, and then they've probably heard, nowadays though, they've probably heard these things like, oh well, like I know what men hear about women is not in the in the mainstream culture, it's not good. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
Women are, all the negative
Yeah,
stereotypes
yeah.
men
You
have about
always
women.
hear stereotypes,
Mhm.
and yeah.
And then what women hear about men is also it's stereotypical stuff. And then you meet who you're supposed to marry.
Uh-huh.
That, what you're bringing to the table is really like a bunch of stereotypes against this person.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people, even in today's world, have like arranged marriages, which I do not think are healthy.
So it's another topic for another day.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just like you should never talk to guys, but you hear all these stereotypes about guys, and there is no like dating before like becoming boyfriend and girlfriend. There's no like getting to know each other phase in India.
Well, in arranged marriage.
No, not even that. Like even in like kids who have relationships, I don't feel like there's so much of getting to know each other phase. Like if you're talking to someone and if you are trying to explore feelings, it's like automatically your boyfriend and girlfriend and you should be together for a long time. And like breakups are like really talked about in a bad way. It's already really hard to deal with breakups, and then like people asking why did you break up, and like trying to do that whole situation for you is also really like crossing the boundary kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really crossing the boundary. Actually, it's the same here with breakups and like it's a communal issue, and there's gossip spreading further.
Yeah, I hate that. But the whole like, I feel like here, like people get to know each other before, and you can. It's not like you getting to know each other. It's like your boyfriend and girlfriend, and then you break up. Is that like that?
Right. No, it's here. It's like you like you. There's so many different variations, but like I had a lot of different girlfriends growing up, and it was all, and I knew a lot of people, and so I saw a lot of relationships with other people too. From what I observed, the average is pretty much you're getting to know the person. You know them before you start dating, then you start dating, then you become boyfriend and girlfriend. Then then whatever happens.
But that like
there's a lot of time up until I mean also it's very much more integrated.
Meeting
boys
families
and girls
is also like really important. I feel like meeting families, that whole like step, like that whole step while getting to know each other and knowing the family is like totally eliminated.
Oh yeah.
And
in India, you mean? Yeah, because you can't just bring them home and be like, hey, this is my boyfriend. Yeah.
That would be nice, like to actually I feel like it would be nice for parents too to actually know who they're dating and stuff, instead of like being in the dark.
Yeah, I mean my parents always knew my girlfriends, and it was nice. Like I had someone who maybe, I mean, well, like I said, they weren't together, so they weren't giving me advice together, but to hear an elder's perspective on the situation, even if it's not like the perfect perspective, it's another perspective, and definitely more mature perspective than my peers at the time, because we were all kids. So to hear those perspectives are definitely important, I think.
Yeah. I also like really like I used to not like Indian movies so much anyways, because the way they show, I don't know if it's a whole Indian movie thing. It's the case in like Telugu movies, the way they show like you meet, like it's literally like most female lead characters. This is the basic like character you see in pretty much every movie, is like the girl would never have boyfriends or anything, and then
she just has her friends, right?
Yeah,
and she likes
a
guy, and her friends like talk about
and then that's it. They end up together, and like it's I don't know. It's just like really, they're promoting really bad things. I feel like it's not great for kids who are watching. Although they would probably think they're promoting like good habits for kids to like I don't know how you
Not talk to the
yeah.
opposite.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, if kids are gonna explore and be curious, anyways, which they always will in every society,
like
you might as well embrace that is actually happening and deal with it, not by like shunning them or saying no, because that's not gonna work ever. You should.
Yeah, and like the emphasis on education is so high. It's as if like you can't have it all. Like you can be good at like the school education thing really doesn't take that much time to learn. It's like so like simple things in school they teach.
But it's drilled in.
Yeah, it's like
over
and over. You just do the same thing. I literally by hearted whole textbook when I was in school. Like I literally know every single topic on which page, on which side, where they are. That's how much I read a 300-page textbook in school instead of actually enjoying my life and like learning how to live and stuff.
Becoming a healthy person.
Yeah. I don't think whatever I learned in school really comes handy. But if I would have learned how to deal with emotions, it would have been much more helpful. I had to learn by myself that to not have expectations from anyone, and to think of yourself as yourself, like that's the only person who's going to be with you from birth to death. And so like just trust yourself more than anyone else, or depend on yourself more than anyone else. It's just like noise, everything else. Even though like you have relationships that are amazing, you never know what's gonna happen. Yeah. And if you're not prepared for it, it can really like break your life. And that happens every single day. But yeah, there are some situations where like they rise in those situations. They rise from it, but they're like so promoted that people who break down are not given so much importance. I feel like it is really important to actually share people's failures as much as we share and applaud people's successes.
There should be like a social media platform for, it could be called failures, and it's like you post adulting, like I had this terrible experience today, I don't know what to think, and then people come and help you. That
would be cool.
But I was thinking like we're talking about how it would be nice if we were taught from a younger age to how to better process emotions, but we're at the same time saying that the greater community helping us is not helpful. I think there's a huge issue there, but I think the reason is that it's right now in the world, the community contradicts itself. So you're not going to get real advice, you're going to get opinions that aren't helpful. Like in an ideal society, we could have the community helping teach kids how to process their emotions. But I think a big problem that we're dealing with is that school of hard knocks, however it may come across in whatever culture or society we're living in, I think that's really the only way that it may not be. It's not the best way ideally, but it might be the best that we can get right now. Like at least there's now a lot of resources on the internet that anyone can access to learn for themselves. And I think that like counselors should be promoted to younger kids. But
yeah, it should be.
But being like forced on them
Yeah.
isn't good. And also like in the Indian culture where there's like the whole community is a part of it, I don't think that's personally.
Yeah, I
don't think
feel
that's
like
good either.
therapy sessions should be like something everyone does.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be like, oh, they have
they have a
problems,
problem, they need
so
therapy.
they need therapy.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
I think everyone. I've been saying this for so long.
yeah.
I think everybody should go to like a weekly therapy session.
Or monthly.
Yeah. At least see a therapist regularly
Yeah.
before problems
Even
arise.
if you don't have any problems. Yeah. It's easier said than done, but if you, I feel like that's what's going to, like, having the same thing. So a lot of, like, nobody has same privileges, but some privileges are talked about a lot compared to other privileges, which makes it harder on kids to think they have their own privileges, their own strengths. To realize that is harder because some strengths are talked about much more than other strengths. Like it's not so much you see that, like, you don't see in the news, oh, this child is really nice child, he always shares with his friends, and he's always smiling and kind to other kids. But you see, oh, this kid wants spelling bee. But like some strengths are like really put on pedestal, and most of the other strengths are not. I feel like everything should be talked about equally.
Yeah.
Especially for kids, I feel like.
Yeah. Where my mind was going when you said privileges, I was thinking like for example, white privilege, right? And when you hear, like, as a kid, you hear, like, especially nowadays, I don't know how much kids hear this. I don't remember what I heard as a kid, but I was listening to a lot of hip hop. So, and most of the artists that I listened to were black. So, the idea I got as a kid wasn't, and I what's it called? I don't remember the word. Put yourself in someone else. I put myself in their shoes more than I did like the average white male or whatever. Especially since being Jewish, my dad never really said you're white. Like we never felt white or anything. But so I can really wrap my mind around this situation that a kid who's not white, who doesn't identify, that's the word, who doesn't identify as white, though their skin color may be a certain tone, like I look white, right? But a kid who hears, oh, white people have it so easy in life, right? They're gonna be like, well, what about me? Like, it's gonna be hard for me, right? And things are gonna be hard. It's not gonna be, and it's if you talk with, if they have a good like counselor or something, they can talk them through that and be like, set that in the right way in their minds, then it can be a healthy thing. Like it can be as healthy as possible, though privilege isn't good anyway.
I mean, if it is like systemic racism, that happens. I feel like that's the
Yeah.
first step to
accept that
accept
it's
that
be hard.
it
Yeah.
happens, and even for people that are privileged, instead of taking it personally and saying no, that's not true,
Mhm.
you should actually accept that it happens if you want. So it's
People
like
to feel
yeah.
equally opportune.
Yeah, and it's really hard to accept that that is the reason you have everything you have, but it's
usually
partially
true.
true.
It's a big part of it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, like and every like I feel like a lot of people like a lot of privileges are not fully talked about either. Like for the race thing that I experienced, there is a privilege of coming from a two-parent household. That is a privilege, and coming from a household where education is like really important, and like giving the skills for your kids is so important, is also a privilege, and that is not talked about.
Mm-hmm. There's certain privileges that are very highly talked of, and race is usually for some reason the biggest one. But it is
something
one
that
of the biggest things in this country.
Yeah.
Where I was going to go with what I was saying though is that as a kid, you can't process what all that means. Like, it would be great if every kid could
be treated the same as other kids,
or at least taught how to process that you might not be.
Yeah.
Like as a
and to know it's not their fault.
Yeah. It would be great if a kid could realize that it might be harder for me. I might have to. I'm not going to have the same life my friend right here is going to have when we grow up just because of the color of our skin.
But that's like really.
But to understand that as a kid, this is what I was trying to say. They're not going to understand that. Like, there's a kid who hears that it's going to be easier for this guy than me is automatically going to be like pushing that guy away. And then that guy isn't gonna realize that they're getting pushed away. They're just gonna be like,
it is though. Like, I don't know how that's gonna be solved. I feel like there needs to be change in the society before kids can actually work through it. But I feel like there is though. Like,
there's two changes that need to happen. One is that there shouldn't be that privilege for made up privileges. It's like, why should a white person have an easier life in this society than a black person, or than why should any one person automatically, because of who they are or because of how they were born, have a greater privilege? But they do. So that's something that needs to change, obviously. But until that changes, we need to offer kids greater support in their understanding of
but without isolating them.
Without isolating, that's true. But I feel like at a certain age, that isolation is there. Like, they understand it. At a certain age, they understand it. They don't understand why or how it's going to affect them.
And also it's like it's not their fault. There's nothing they can do that can change it. Like, it's adults' responsibility to change it. It's like really cruel to even ask a kid to understand. That's like, it can, like, things can happen to him or her just because of something.
Just because of something out of their control.
And that leads to a lot of problems growing into adulthood too. It's yeah, it's like a totally different situation. Man, it's not in your control. It's not in your control. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. It's definitely on the adults to fix a lot of things. And if we're talking about children and their outlook on life and their growth as a person, their development, that's on. You can't ever expect a kid to do that on their own. That is on the adult world too, to offer that to kids. Because just like when I was brought to that room as a kid at school and told what the problem is not, that didn't do anything for me. Like you can't force it on kids, but if they would have said, hey, we know, like if they would have pulled me aside and said, hey, we know your parents just went through something, do you want to talk about it? I would have. And if you don't want to talk about it now, if you ever do, come to us, we can talk to us. They didn't do that. That would have been, as a kid, I could have, that would have sat with me, and I could have eventually realized, yeah, I want to talk about it today, like this, I'm going through it today, I want to go talk to them about it this day. With everything, I think that would be with privilege issues, with any issue that a kid is going to go through. If you have that system where you can offer them an ear that they can trust, because that was another thing. I didn't know who these people were that were calling me up. I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
And so if it's someone that you can trust, that you can talk to as a kid, that would help develop that that ability to process what you're going through better.
Yeah. It is really important to trust. Yeah, trust issues are really important, honestly. Like, once you lose that trust, it's like really hard to move on for a while until you rework it.
Yeah, and building trust for a lot of people
is also
hard. Yeah.
I don't think I trust anyone.
Yeah, I don't. I have major, you can call it trust issues, but I have major probably reasonable trust issues, like a lot of reasons to not trust blindly anything.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people in my life don't know a lot of things because I don't share some things. I don't want to share. It's a lot to deal with, but it is so important to deal with so you can have a healthier, happier life. I feel like that is the most important thing, is to not only physical health, mental health is so important. Like nothing doing excess of is valuable. Like
and if we want to give a healthier life to the next generation,
we need to work our traumas, and
we're gonna work on our traumas, but also our willingness to let someone else be happier than we were. I feel like a lot of older people have that mentality that, like, well, it was hard for me. That's just life.
It can be better. Just because it is like that for you doesn't mean everyone else has to struggle, but also it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like, life today is so much different than life 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Yeah, it's not the same. Seriously, like, don't even start about it. Like, even like 3 years ago, I feel like life is so different than life is today. And all these economic cycles are, I feel like it was far and fewer in between back in the day compared to now. There was economic downfall 2001, 2008, 2019, 2022. That is so fewer. I mean, so often and close with each other. Like, you feel like, oh, now I can probably feel a little bit relaxed. Now you're going to lose your job. Now figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like there is no winning. Like, I feel like people just expect you to work, and as soon as, like, even for a second, if you get sidetracked, then you lose everything you've worked for. And for some people, even without sidetracking, you lose everything you worked for in seconds. And yeah, nobody is held responsible for any of it. It's like,
so I think at one point in our last episode, we said that what we need is like break to process everything, like a worldwide break, just like they took a break for the pandemic, a worldwide break for processing emotions. Is that still a consensus? Still something we need?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. There are weekends, but there's so much to do on weekends. Like,
and it's not. Yeah, everyone doesn't have the same weekend type thing. People work on weekends. Like,
yeah. But in general, you have some off days in the week.
Okay,
But that's mostly spent in doing the chores, which will support your life for the week. So if you miss any of the chore to make time for processing your emotions, your whole week falls apart.
So we could use the time off to process our emotions, to process what's happened in history, recent and all of history, and then figure out before everyone goes back to work in this pandemic of mental health, before everyone goes back to work, we need to figure out how to make it more supportive for kids.
That's it's not.
These are the things that need to happen.
Yeah, we should.
Our evening tea for president. 2020.
Put it in the universe that these happen with optimistic mindset.
And I mean, even like spreading a movement can.
Yeah.
We're starting the movement.
We
need a break.
Yeah. Yeah. It will also, like, having a break will also help us dig deeper into the whole, like, climate issues.
Yeah, all the issues,
and, like, come to consensus about it. Yeah.
The only thing that isn't solved with the break the only thing that isn't made better with a break is
productivity.
Yeah, productivity. No, not even productivity, because productivity is better if you take a break and recoup. But the only thing that isn't made better is our distraction from the real issues. Like, whoever and whatever force in this world is wanting us to be distracted would be very upset. As Umsum says, or whatever, they'd be a very sad lot.
Yeah.
So you wanna anything else you want to say? Yeah, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, we can wrap it up. I feel like there will be a lot more to say, but it's for another episode sometime in the future.
Yeah. So subscribe to the channel and
throw in your ideas in the comments.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.